In previous real side experiences I have shared over the years, among the various types of assignments I have been involved with would include the locating and securing of what I broadly refer to as artifacts. With our intent overall set with the ears, the real awareness deciding its want to recognize it, and the personal self aligning itself with this real purpose objective also. So what transpires on the real side will be that which facilitates this true reality recognition, the earning of one's awareness to that end. And so, amidst the process of the facing of the self, and disassembling the attachment we have to our created consciousness, so we will be involved in activity that will afford us a greater standing as the real awareness that we are, absent of the personal self ideas we cling to that limit this true self-positioning. As I said, there will be many guide-offered assignments where if we are agreeable, so these will consist of a real side multi-dimensional action that will be beneficial overall to all life and awareness, a support for the true reality, the isness therefore, by supporting that which is a part of it, real awareness, the true essence of that which we and every being actually is. And so effectively we are supporting ourselves by supporting the ears, and as everything equals itself, so as we support and bolster ourselves awareness beneficially, this equates to a greater standing as the real awareness that we are, and ultimately a recognition of the ears that we are a part of. In essence, then, this has us seeing life in a completely alternate fashion, rather than as everything being segregated and aside from ourselves. Everything is in fact the same thing. Everything is life. This isness, everything awareness. And so realistically, to not support and assist the awareness of others, this rather would be an exercise in self-sabotage, and the restricting, diminished reflecting experience and life position for ourselves will mirror such awareness detracting choices consequently. As it is all about awareness, that which animates through creation, but creation that is as an unreal reality that has nothing to do with it other than to be utilized as a tool for comparison purposes that we may recognize the ears from. Really then, anything creational-wise, anything created is really very secondary, and in and of itself has no bearing on the true self, the real awareness that we are. But everything is workable. Everything created idea-wise is as a reference, a comparative tool, that which the is isn't, and beyond that we would endeavour not to become immersed in the ideas, to embrace them, or become emotionally attached. For to be able to be extricated from creation, one must be able to be standing as the real awareness, untethered and disassociated from any idea. Nevertheless, while we are in creation, it makes sense to utilize what is available, what has been created, or that which we decide to create, if it makes sense to do so, if it is as an aid to awareness. Anything's possible in creation, as its design and mechanics provide each participant the means to program the consciousness with whatever ideas are desired. The consciousness then effects a body form which decodes these ideas, converts them into the simulation we then experience. We each then are the deciders of our created lifetimes, and can indeed experience anything. We can develop the consciousness that our body forms are possessing of any attributes and abilities we choose, but of course, as creationally powerful as a body form can become, for it to be able to exercise its powers over others, the recipient must agree. As the deciders, we must accept and incorporate the agreement idea file that this powerful being can exercise his or her chosen abilities over us, for this to be our experience. Inasmuch as body forms can be developed any way imaginable as effected through our consciousness design, so it is with items, objects, additional simulation, that we either make use of what has already been decided, consciousness installed and is available to utilize, or that we create something entirely new and mold it in whatever particular way we choose, once we figure out and determine how this is so. In reality, it's just a case of a click, enter. We see the intent, simulation follows intent, simulation then affords us what we require for the task. We take the appropriate action, as everything already is and available in actuality. An intent is already its effect. And so, if it has been decided as to the creation of additional simulator features, and these features have been imbued with particular ideas that have them as potentially powerful or potent, and if the utilizing of them can be beneficial, awareness and life speaking, so then it follows that we would be seeking such features, items, or artifacts on the real side, securing them and applying them accordingly. The real awareness, being this isness everything reality that is through all consciousness, will then have access to all the ideas consciousness comprises of, all the details regarding the creation of such artifacts, their whereabouts, and the means by which they can be utilized. But as must be stressed, as I mentioned earlier, we endeavor to use creation, to work it to our awareness advantage, but not to become seduced or sucked into it, and make that which is simulated our reality. This real side experience would be another artifact securing exercise then. I would be with a group of other agreeable individuals, as I tend to invariably be. But interestingly, the moment we embarked on this particular assignment, the strong sense of having done this before would be so, of the securing of this particular series of artifacts. An assignment long forgotten, the reference memory file having been beyond reach, until my returning to this same assignment would trigger the recollection. But an experience repeat then that impressions revealed hadn't been originally executed in this lifetime, physical or real side. It rather reiterates that as everything is present in the isness reality, this would include everything creational. This would include every moment of a consciousness, idea, decision, and installation, every moment of every simulator from its inception to its implosion, and so every simulator at each moment of its consciousness-effected design is available and present in the nowness of the isness reality, as though an endless available source of creational bubbles. And so really then, it must be what we decide that has us projected into a particular simulator, and at a particular point of its cycle progression from a golden to iron age, etc., inception to implosion. Realistically then, our awareness can quite readily be reinserted into this same simulator, but at a stage prior to the moment we currently are in, as though moving back in time. In theory, we could have a future so-called lifetime which actually would be construed as an era prior to this one, as all eras are simply idea bubble simulator encasement realities that, should we find ourselves projected into through the ideas we decide and agree with, we can effectively position ourselves creationally anywhere and any when, as the wheres and whens are really illusory and don't exist in reality. There is only this forever nowness moment of isness actuality. And so, quite conceivably, could we repeat the same series of decisions, intents and actions that have us on a reflected, repeating series of experiences. We could be operating in a particular part of the simulator's cycle over and over again, if the intent, the ideas, facilitate such. For a number of experiences have I shared where it seems I am repeating certain experiences again, but impressions suggesting they are not those I have experienced in this current lifetime. However, they are experiences that are those which are in association with our current focus, involving the same groups, new friends, etc. For really then, does it matter as to the means of his recognition, as long as this is accomplished? If repeating the same portion of a simulator's experience is the most effective option, then it makes sense to do such. And perhaps if the opportunity of the years were forfeited, if we had stepped back at one point, but chose to reignite the journey again at some point or moment, is it not inconceivable that we might have our awareness reinserted into the particular consciousness moment to effected simulator experience, which took us to the positioning with the life we were before, just prior to our stepping back from it? But anyway, the revisited assignment, the acquisition of artifacts, would have my group and myself frequenting various locations. Initially, we would be walking a kind of a desert setting. We would be approaching a destination, and although nothing was afforded impression-wise as to what awaited me there, as I had done this before, I knew it would be a series of stone monuments. that on the activation of a specific series of physical actions, so would beings, body forms of stone, also manifest and present us with the artifact we sought. This would indeed be the case. We would then enter a cave system, again exactly as I and my group had once experienced before, and we were met with resistance. The resistance would take the form of an assortment of robotic-like creatures that we would effectively navigate through as we nullified them with blue energy that we emitted from our very body forms. Our body forms had also altered as though to better facilitate our successful access, becoming somewhat mechanized in their own right. Although we never visually reached the central part of the cave system, which represented our objective, I knew this had been achieved. For whatever specific purpose we had for doing so, as oftentimes certain information and simulation on the real side assignments is omitted, as the dark forces tend to be watching also, etc., and we don't want them to have access to that which they will use for controlling purposes. The entire experience was as though a series of escalating artifact and agreement securing endeavours, each step building upon the one before. The sense of it was as though advancing through levels in a computer game to reach a conclusion as an analogy. We then would enter an open countryside setting and had to navigate through a series of very hostile beings and body types, many of which were very nightmarish in appearance and of an insectoid design, a body form that tends be in association with the dark forces, or that represents and is an affected reflection of ill-intended, distorted consciousness. And again, the strong sense of having done this before, to the extent that generally the real awareness tends orchestrate the experience, utilizing the simulated self, and the personal self just sits back and bears witness. But as the memory was so intense, so my personal self could in fact take the reins of the experience and repeat what the group and I had once done before, based on the memory of how we had previously gone about it, and so this would be the case. But at times, and throughout this series of activities, where the memory was a little hazy, so the personal self would sit back again and let the real awareness dictate affairs. For in this scene, we had to as though execute another complex series of actions that culminated in spherical stone objects emerging from the ground, which would release to us their contents, these being further artifacts of significance. Interestingly, as I said, we had done this once before, and in this scene, when we had previously been here, as a consequence of our artifact extraction, so had the land been reduced to a kind of a murky swamp. For the location was infested with insectoid-like beings, despite its natural setting, so visually rather a seductive, yet dangerous spot, as though the insectoids were charged with protection of these artifacts. But once the artifacts were removed, the surface visual of the tranquil nature scene gave way to its true essence, an eerie swamp that was as much an expression of a distorted consciousness as the body forms that roamed there. And although this was effectively a reset scene, we were in the process of fending off the insectoids and securing the artifacts, and so until achieved, the nature setting would be retained. However, we also had a kind of overlap of the same scene in which our objective was completed, where the setting was as a dismal swamp. We were successful again this time around. Everything became dark, swamp-like. The very waters became treacherous, as tendril-like appendages emanating from the waters would seek to snag us and drag us under. The insectoid creatures now swimming in the murk also, partially submerged, but no less hazardous. The scene would end there, as I said, the securing of artifacts that would present as beneficial in some way, and now I would find myself in the company of an individual that my real awareness impressions revealed was a real guide. We were in a kind of a building, though the sense was that it was designed for the containment of the being we were to be engaging with, an especially creationally powerful being in fact, but one the guide was endeavouring to bring on board, for these powerful beings can indeed be very influential and effect all manner of beneficial alteration to the simulators they reside in, if they so decide. The guide didn't require really my assistance, but they always will attend to offer us participatory opportunity, that we have the chance to earn our way and so forth, become more capable and self-sufficient through our dealings with all these various beings and body types, agreeable or abrasive as they may be, etc. We entered the central part of the containment facility. As I said, it was as though the real guides had locked this being down, utilised the karma it had accrued for itself creatively, in other words. Not exactly Phantom Zone-like, not that extreme, but still containment nonetheless. Really then, it was what the being had decided and effected for itself. Effects the guides had managed in this way, to put the being out of the way, that it could no longer harm or disrupt others, as had been its inclination. As I said, suggesting the being was willing to negotiate, cooperate, as the guides now had a karmic leverage, so to speak, and as we came into the being's presence, its body form was that of a young boy. He darted around the central containment chamber like a nimble chimpanzee, hiding behind the curtains, the furniture, but this was more a deceptive ruse than anything, a disarming tactic, designed to have the observers consider the childlike body form vulnerable and harmless. But my impressions were that he was indeed a very powerful being, despite his external form. And it was as though he realised his disarming methods were pointless, and so would bring some of his powers to bear, warping and manipulating the very room we were in, bending the simulation to his will. But the guide would nullify his actions before they became too extreme, and we would engage with him and place our cards on the table, so to speak, to determine how agreeable he was to assist Duane and the guides, etc. That experience ended there, but several nights later I would find myself in my deceased grandparents' house, and as I have shared before, oftentimes the real guides not only use this recreated house as a meeting place for them and myself, where Duane has also featured on occasion, but the guides themselves will assume the forms of my deceased grandparents also, and this would be the case here, the real awareness impressions providing assurances they were the genuine guides, and not dark force shape-altering imposters, as has been the case on previous experiences also. And as I sat in the living room with the two guides, one in the form of my grandmother, the other in the form of my grandfather, so they would gesture, and joining us now would be the young boy body form from the previous experience, the powerful being, evidently now agreeable, had been set loose from his confinement, and even boasted a far healthier appearance, for previously he had looked ghoul-like, dark-rimmed eyes, and gaunt of figure. He would be as though presenting all manner of information, as the guides and myself listened. He was agreeable to assist in whatever capacity he could, as I said, and as he spoke, his form would alter that he became now a mechanized body type. The mechanized form would fade moments later, and standing there now was no longer a boy, but a man of around the mid-30s. He was a white man with jet black hair and a neatly trimmed black beard to match. His facial features were angular, with high cheekbones. Regardless of his changing outer form, it was still the powerful being throughout, and although much of what he said I fail to recollect on waking, he provided the guides and myself a dossier of all he had uttered. The one thing he did speak of that I recollected was that a great serpent was now loosed on the earth. The guides would confirm this was so, and would discuss how Paul Twitchell had made mention of this at some point, that Paul had predicted this happening, based on the agreements that were present, and apparently now it was indeed so. Interestingly, a few of my real side experiences I have shared had hinted at the possibility of the life-level reptilian gods deciding to rampage on the actual physical level on the earth, where they would take the form of giant snakes, winged serpents, or dragons. So this rather verified this as an impending potentiality. But regardless, there the experience would end. We had our artifacts, and in whatever way they will be of beneficial application, and we had the very powerful being on board and agreeable with the guides.
Ta-da! That's terrific, Kevin. And when you were talking about explaining the different creations and simulators, yes, so that's in reference to the universal files. So that's always available, and there's so much there, it's ridiculous, but that's always available just as a reference itself. Yeah. But you're the great definer here, young man, and really defining this very, very well, and adding this adventure to it also. And so those that have the courage to step up, be part of it, whatever, they're very fortunate, because there's nothing like it. Yeah, it's the real deal, and we're doing it. And this is where very, very few people see it, because they like their passiveness. They like their five body attachments, whatever, and all the little ideas with it that just goes nowhere.
And so, sing the new you song. It is your connection to the true reality, the all is, that the real you, your real awareness, is a part of. New you.